Welcome back to Rise and Tell with Sheekha. I am Sheekha Singh, your host and author. I have got something special to share. My brand new book, Unburnable Ambition, How Overachievers Win Without Burning Out, is coming on Jan 5th, 2026. This book is for all of us who dream big but refuse to let burnout be the price. If you'd like early chapter, preview, and launch bonuses, head to shekhasingh.com/unburnableambition and sign up today. Now let's dive into today's episode. Today, I have with me a wonderful coach who specializes and is certified in the DISC personality communication tools and has been working as a coach since 2011. Scott Maderer is an expert in helping people transition from working to living their calling. I learned a lot about the DISC personality tool, and having taken one in the past, it was interesting to see how Scott explained the different quadrants and the strengths of people who fall in these different personalities. We also discussed what it means to know what your calling is, and we spoke a lot about time management. He is a certified human behavior consultant and member of the John Maxwell team. After almost 30 years in education, Scott and Carrie founded the Inspired Stewardship to live out their own calling to coaching in 2011. He is also the author of the book Inspired Living, Assemble the Puzzle of Your Calling by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Your Treasures. And I hope you learn a thing or two about time management and the DISC personality from this episode. Welcome to our show, Scott. How have you been?
I have been awesome. Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Of course. It is our pleasure to have you on our show. All right, we'll just dive right in, Scott. I want to know what inspired you to publish your book.
You know, honestly, I've been working as a coach for a long time, and a lot of the frameworks I've developed over the years, I started coaching back in 2011, took it full time in 2017. I've worked with a lot of people in a lot of different parts of the world, and a lot of themes kept coming up. And what I've seen in a lot of books is they try to teach kind of a process. And the problem with the process is it works if you kind of start at the same point and end at the same point. And so I took a different approach. I wanted to put out a book that had what I would call frameworks in it.
Right.
And frameworks are different than a process in that they're a way of thinking, they're a mindset, they're a system that you can use that kind of works no matter where you are. Right. You can plug it in different places and it still continues to work. And so I had this idea of taking a little different approach, taking the idea of frameworks around the areas of time, talent, and money, because that's what I was working on as a coach. And
Right.
that was the areas that people kept coming for help. And obviously, as a coach, I can't talk to everybody.
Yeah.
But a book is something that more people can find accessible, and do outreach. And so it was really that heart of putting out the frameworks that I discovered that worked and putting them out in a way that more people could have access to them.
Awesome. Congratulations on your book, first of all, Scott.
Thank you.
And second, let's say I give you a hypothetical situation, and I'm pretty sure you must have encountered this multiple times during your journey as a coach. Let's say there's a family of 4 or 5, and one of the parents wants to write a book or do something else other than the 9 to 5. But there are responsibilities, there are chores, there are a lot of events that go on revolving around the kid or their work or whatever. How can one find time or the energy to spend on something that they've wanted to do for a very long time?
A lot of it comes, and you're right, this is something that I run into all the time. In fact, a lot of people come, and the reason that they're coming around time is there's something I know I'm supposed to be doing. That may be a book, that may be starting a business, that may whatever. There's something that I feel called to do, compelled to do, and yet I don't have the time to do that.
Right.
So the first reality is to recognize that it's never a matter of, quote, having the time.
Okay.
You don't have or not have time. In fact, I tell my clients, you're not allowed to say, I don't have time. You just have to remove that from your vocabulary.
Okay.
Instead, you want to say, that's not a priority for me.
Mm.
Now, here's the interesting thing. If you change that language, it'll literally change the way you make decisions.
Okay.
And by the way, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll suddenly magically find the time to write the book, but it does allow you to look at what is taking your time and start to think, wait a minute, is that actually more important than writing the book right now?
Right.
So for instance, I have people that they feel guilty because it's like they're working on something like a project or a book or whatever it is. And then the grandkids come over.
Yeah.
And they're like, now I want to go visit with the grandkids, but I feel guilty for being with the grandkids. And I feel guilty that I'm not writing the book.
Right.
And it's kind of like, well, wait, which is the priority for you right now? Is it writing the book or is it spending time with the grands? Well, spending time with the grands. Then don't feel guilty. You made an intentional choice.
Correct.
So it is a matter of sitting down and looking at what you're saying yes to and being very intentional about saying yes to the most important things. Now, what's interesting is a lot of times then it'll be like, well, how can I say yes to writing the book without saying no to doing all the obligations I have? I've got to create time somewhere, right? I've got to, quote, make time.
Right.
Don't really make time. But what you do is make it a priority. So maybe it's getting up earlier. Maybe it's staying up later. Maybe it's saying no to something else that you've been doing that turns out isn't as important to you as writing the book. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that, I don't know, volunteer activity I'm doing or that extra project that I put on that I just said yes to because I kind of felt obligated that I had to say yes. Yeah. But the truth is, I don't.
Right.
Someone else can do it, being the class mom or that kind of thing. You can say no to that and somebody else can step up and do it and it's okay. And so it's really sitting down and intentionally kind of reprioritizing and thinking through, what am I saying yes to? So that what you end up saying no to is the things that aren't as important. And therefore you don't feel as guilty or frustrated. And so sometimes that means writing that book takes you 3 years instead of, 3 months.
Right.
Okay, who cares? Right. It doesn't matter as long as you're continuing to make the forward progress and you're doing it intentionally and saying yes to the most important things and no to the least important things.
Awesome. That's some solid advice right there. Thank you, Scott. All right, let's talk about calling. I know you talk a lot about finding your calling. How can one even recognize that, I think this is my calling? Like, I remember, I think it's based on exposure, but I really want to know your take on it.
So calling is interesting because first off, I think a lot of times we define it wrong. And so let me back up. And at least for me, this is the way I think about it and define it. Because a lot of times we use the word calling and what we're thinking about is the thing we get paid to do. And those aren't actually the same thing. They don't actually even come from the same words. Right. So we actually have a word in English. We call it career. And then we have a word and we call it vocation. And we treat those two words like they mean the same thing and they actually don't. Okay. Career comes from the root word for cart. It literally means something that transports you from point A to point B. Our career is what we get paid to do. Right. It's the thing that somebody gives us money to do. Our calling, on the other hand, the real word that we would use is vocation. And if you think about the word vocation, it's the same as vocalization, vocal. Right. It actually comes from the root word vocalis, which means to be called. Right. Right. So here's the first thing. To be called means somebody has to do the calling. So I'm a person of faith. I believe in God, whatever name you want to give it. I attribute it to that, but I don't care what name you want to put on it. It puts down to the idea that you are designed and built to do certain things. There are things that when you do them, it's like this jives, this fits, this belongs. Right. And then there are other things you do that it's not in alignment and doesn't fit as perfectly. And by the way, there are some things that you have to do just because you're a human being and you have to do them to survive. Right. Okay. So this isn't about everything has to align perfectly all the time. Nobody's life is like that. Instead, it's that more of my life is in alignment. So your calling, if you think about that, it threads between all of the components of your life. Your calling shows up in how you're a mom, shows up in how you're a dad, how you're a spouse, how you're a brother, how you work at your career, how you do everything. It's part of who you are. So now your original question was, great, how do we figure that out? Right. So I got 2 quick activities that you can do, and anyone can do these at any point in life. And by the way, I recommend that you do it more than once, because usually finding our calling is more of a process of discovery than it is the sudden epiphany from on high of, oh, the angels are singing and now I know. It's more like you're kind of uncovering and discovering as you go.
Right.
So the first activity is a looking back one. Just take a sheet of paper, a couple of sheets of paper, divide it into 3 columns. Down the left-hand column, just begin to brainstorm things that you've done in your life.
Okay.
By the way, I didn't say things that you've gotten paid to do in your life. I just said things you've done.
Right.
It can be relationships. It can be activities. It can be roles that you've had. It can be things that you've done as a career. Doesn't matter. Be as broad as you can and just start brainstorming things that you've done in your life. Then in the middle column, next to each of those activities, write down things about that activity that you enjoyed, things about that activity that gave you energy, things about that activity that felt like they came naturally to you.
Right.
What were the parts of the activity that jazzed you up? And then in the last column, what were things about that activity that took energy away from you, that drained you, that you didn't like as much, that were more out of alignment with kind of when you felt like you belonged?
Right.
And what you can then do is go back and start looking at this. And this is one of those activities that it's good to kind of spend some time on and go back to and mull over and begin to look for patterns, because you'll discover that you use different words, but things keep showing up. There will be stuff that shows up in the love column over and over and over again. It'll be in different ways. It'll have different language, but the pattern will be there.
Right.
By the same token, there will be things that show up in the don't love column over and over and over. So this kind of gives you some foundational building blocks to begin to think about, these are parts of my life from what I've already done that I've already discovered are more in alignment with how I'm designed, how I'm built, what I'm supposed to be doing. And these are things that are less in alignment. It's not going to be perfect, but it gives you some building blocks. I also firmly believe that if you're going to build something, you kind of need to know what it's going to look like when you're done building. You got to have a direction, right? So the second activity is a future focused activity, a looking forward activity.
Okay.
I used to travel a lot when I was in the corporate world. I was in planes all the time. So I set this in an airport in honor of my past life. So imagine for a minute, you've been on one of those trips, and this is 5 years in the future.
Okay.
So 5 years from today, you've been on one of those trips where you fly somewhere, you do your business, and then on the way home, you've got that airport in between that you've got to land at, and then you got to, continue the flight, change planes and continue the flight. And as you're changing planes in that middle of the road airport, so you walk up to the gate, you look up and you see those dreaded words, flight delayed. Great. So you wait. How long is the flight delayed? 4 hours. Okay. So you're stuck in an airport in the middle of nowhere with nothing to do for at least 3 or 4 hours. So you do what anyone does when they're stuck in an airport with nothing to do in the middle of nowhere for 3 or 4 hours. You either go find a bar or a restaurant, depending on your particular druthers and what time of day it is.
Correct.
I'm going to pick a restaurant. So you go find a restaurant. As you're walking into that restaurant, and remember, this is 5 years from today, all of a sudden from across the restaurant, you hear a voice.
Okay.
Hey, how you doing? It's a friend of yours that you haven't seen for the last 5 years. They moved away. You moved away. Y'all both got busy. You've maybe chatted a few times online and things, but nothing major. They're like, how are you doing? You're like, oh, it's so great to see you. Fancy meeting you here. How funny. Hey, are you going to be here long? Well, I wasn't going to be, but yeah, now I'm here 4 hours.
Right.
And you're like, great. Well, I'm going to be here a couple hours too. Let's grab a table and catch up. So you grab a table in the corner of the room, and your friend looks at you and says, man, I am so glad I've run into you. We've lost touch over the last 5 years. How's life been treating you? And you look at your friend and you go, you know what? These last 5 years have been the best 5 years of my life because. That's the activity.
Okay.
Tell me what comes after the word because.
Right.
What's true about your career? What's true about your finances? What's true about your spiritual walk? What's true about your relationships? What's true about all of the different components of your life? What would be true to make you honestly look at your best friend that you'd lost track with and say, these have been some of the best 5 years of my life?
Right.
What would have had to have happened? So between these two pieces, you have foundational blocks to build from, and you have a general idea of the direction you want to head in. By the way, that 5 year plan, that idea of, oh, this is what I want to do, that's not what's going to happen.
Right.
Okay, that's not the point. This isn't about making a concrete plan of exactly what my life is going to look like in 5 years, because it's never going to look like that.
Right.
But it is about having that direction, having that sense of, oh, I want something different in this component of my life. And sometimes it's an area that surprises you. I've had people do this and they're like, I didn't even know that's something I wanted.
Yeah.
But it shows up. And then all of a sudden it's on your radar and you can look back at the pieces that you have, the foundational pieces, and start thinking, maybe I need to get more of this in my life. Maybe it is writing that book. Maybe it is putting something out into the world. Maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's quitting your job. Maybe it's having children or getting into a relationship. Whatever it is, you suddenly begin to see that that may be an area that you at least need to explore and discover and figure out. Is that really in alignment with how I'm built, how I'm designed, and what I'm called to do?
Correct. Yeah, I agree. What great idea. That is a wonderful activity that anybody can try. And I feel that's when things get real, is when you put down your pen on the paper and you're actually putting your thoughts on it.
Yep.
Doesn't matter what it is, the minute you write it down, I feel is when things start to get real.
Absolutely. It makes it much more concrete for a lot of us, because here's the thing, you have vague ideas, but you don't really ever sit down and process them.
Correct.
Until you write it down. Now, I will say this, if you're one of those people like me who hates to write, okay, this is where technology can actually help you. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I love to do, and I used to do, is I would get the voice app on my phone and I'd go for a walk, because I do some of my best thinking when I'm walking.
Yeah.
And I just, put my headphones in. So my phone is recording me and I just talk to myself.
Yeah.
I'm sure people that saw me walking down the road talking to myself thought I was crazy, but whatever, and I just tell myself the story and just brainstorm. And then nowadays you can actually run that through a million tools and turn it into written stuff and clean it up and make it pretty. But it's still a way of, I jokingly tell people, I actually didn't write my book. I talked my book because I don't like to write, but you can get to a written material without necessarily sitting down and writing.
Right.
But you're right. It's when you put it into a concrete form that it becomes real to us, because that's when you can start putting pieces together and going, what are the steps I need to take to move from here to there? What's the next action I need to take, as opposed to just kind of having this vague idea.
Correct. And also another point, Scott, is that, how you mentioned when you go on your walk, it's that time for you where it's just for yourself and it's only for you and your thoughts. I feel like a lot of people lack that. They are so entangled with a lot of things on their to-do list or whatever it is, that even when they get that sliver of time for themselves, they want to fill it up. They are never comfortable being alone with their thoughts, which is why I feel they lack the ideas, or they lack that focus of what they need to do to become better or to make themselves better. I've seen so many people, including my friends and my family. Everyone has the same thing. Oh, I'm busy. I'm like, busy doing what? And how can you be that busy that you forget what your favorite color is, or what do you like anymore, or what do you not like anymore? They're like, oh, you don't get it. We have kids, we have families, we have work, we have chores. I'm like, I have the exact same things, but I prioritize that time for myself, because unless and until I give the permission for myself to be bored, I feel like I'm just polluting my brain with all these extra things, TV and phones and computers and laptops and the constant influx of reels and videos and updates from people. I'm like, okay, stop it. There has to be a time when people should be realizing that being busy is not that glorifying at all. That means something's wrong there if you're not taking time for yourself to figure out what is it that you actually want and where is it that you're actually spending your time. Because I see people, even when they go on the walks, they're either chatting or talking to someone on the phone. Again, if that's one of the ways where you're catching up with your friends and family and you're making time, perfect. That's awesome. I love you for doing that.
It's really about intentionality.
Yeah.
It's so often we've built up habits of behavior, but we haven't ever actually thought about, hey, is this something that's serving me well?
Yeah.
Or is this not something that's serving me well?
Correct.
And, if we're doing more of the stuff that's helping us, great. That's a good habit, keep it. But on the other hand, if you're doing things that are keeping you from growth or success or that sort of thing, okay, well, now that's a bad habit and we need to reform it and reconstruct it and develop and channel it in a different way. Yeah. So, again, if you want to use, like you just said, if you want to use a certain time of the day as your catch-up time, great. But then have another time. And it may not be, and again, it's different for different people at different phases of life. If you've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old at home, early morning might be a great time if the kids sleep in. Other people, their 2-year-olds up at 4:30 in the morning. Yeah. And it's like, okay, forget mornings then. You're not going to do it in the morning. Yeah. You've got to find a different time.
Correct.
So it's not necessarily that there's a one size fits all way of doing it, but it is about sitting back and being intentional and deciding, where am I going to do it? We always hear about, balance. And the problem with using that word is people hear balance and they think it means everything's equal and everything's the same and, every day works the same and all of these things. That's not really what balance means. Yeah. Balance is an active process. It's not a passive process.
Correct.
You don't believe me? Close your eyes, stand on one foot, and see how you balance. Okay. Mm-hmm. What'll be interesting is you'll be constantly rocking and moving back and forth because it's an active process. Balance is not passive. Yeah. We constantly move. And so that is the same thing in our life. Balance actually means actively going through and intentionally saying, what am I going to do? What am I not going to do? Busy has become a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Where all busy means is you do a lot of stuff.
Correct.
I use the example of this. I can pay you money to be busy. Okay. So here it is. I'm going to pay you $100 a day to go in my backyard. I've got a big pile of rocks on one side of my backyard. You're going to pick up one rock and you're going to carry it to the other side of the yard. You're going to put it down and then you're going to go back to the pile and you're going to keep doing that.
Right.
And when you run out of rocks, you're going to pick them up from the new pile and carry them back to where the old pile was and put them down one at a time. That's what you're going to do all day long. I'll pay you $100 a day. A lot of people would go, that's not enough money. Mm-hmm. Okay. How about $1,000 a day or $10,000 a day or $100,000 a day? I could pay you enough money that you would do that. But even there, you are only going to do it a certain amount of time before you suddenly look up and go, I got enough money in the bank. I don't need to do this anymore. I'm going to go find something else that has more purpose, that has more value, that I enjoy more, that is more connected to me. Yeah. So it's not about don't go pick up rocks. That's busy time. It's about be intentional about, why am I picking up those rocks?
Right.
Again, if I did it so you paid me $100,000 a day to go pick up rocks, I'd go do that for a couple of weeks. Yeah. After about 2 weeks, I've got enough money in the bank. I don't need to do this anymore. I'm going to go do something else. Yeah. So it's, it's that idea of being intentional. That, by the way, is a frame that can help you if you are right now stuck in that job that you just kind of feel like you have to do because it's paying the bills and keeping you fed. Okay. That's your time picking up rocks. But do it again, step back and go, yeah, but do I want to pick up rocks the rest of my life?
Right.
Oh, no, I don't. Okay, then what do I need to start putting in place today so that 2 years from now or 5 years from now or 10 years from now or whatever it is, I'm not picking up rocks anymore. Correct. I'm doing something else.
Correct. And then, okay, Scott, I know you are an expert when it comes to the DISC personality questionnaires. Walk us through the importance of the level of personalities that come out after taking that survey, because I've taken one at one of my workplaces and I know the importance of it, especially as a leader. You definitely want to know what the DISC results are for your team. So that way you're able to communicate with them effectively in a way that feels good to them and you understand because, okay, this is their personality. So walk us through the importance of that.
And I love calling DISC, you hit on it, a communication tool as much as anything. So it is one way, and there are a ton out there, and they're all good. Yeah. Well, I won't say all. Most of them are good, okay, at giving us insight into how we're wired.
Right.
And it's kind of we use them for a couple of ways. The first thing is to understand ourselves.
Right.
Because you need to understand your own biases, your own way of communicating, what comes natural to you, and what's work for you. The second level is to understand others.
Correct.
Because now if I understand, hey, I'm wired this way and you're wired that way, I can then do the third step, which is begin to modify how I communicate to better make sure that you understand and I've given you what you need to succeed and behave well and do everything that you need to do. So especially in a leadership position, like you said, it's incredibly valuable to first know yourself.
Correct.
And that's the most important step. And then to learn the team so that you can begin to interface with them. And by the way, as a leader, if you know them, you are the one that has to change the way you communicate. 100%. Not because I've seen leaders do this and be like, well, everyone should know who I am, so they should now communicate the way I need. And it's like, no, that's backwards. Right. You need to modify it for them. So what is DISC? DISC is really just kind of a quadrant system. I love it because it's simple enough that I can actually understand it and apply it real time.
Yes.
So teach it to you real quick. There's kind of 4 quadrants, D, I, S, and C. And it's based on 2 criteria that most people are either more of one or more of the other. Yeah. So here's the first one. On the up and down axis, think of the old XY coordinate plane from geometry or algebra back in school days. And on the up and down, at the top, we put outgoing, and at the bottom, we put reserved. Yeah. Now, to be clear, outgoing and reserved here are not the same as extrovert and introvert. They actually have to do with how your internal motor runs. So outgoing people are people that get up in the morning and they're go, 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 go. They talk fast. They move fast. They use their hands a lot. They're just out there active from the minute they get up to the minute they go to bed. And that's just how their motor runs. Reserved people, on the other hand, are a little calmer. They're a little slower to talk. They think a little bit more before they do anything, slower to make a decision. They just kind of run through life in a little calmer way. So would you agree some people are more outgoing and some people are more reserved naturally? Yeah. Right? Okay. For you, and I know you said you already taken a DISC test, but just out of curiosity, were you more outgoing or reserved?
I was, yeah, more outgoing.
More outgoing. Yeah. Okay. So the second quadrant on the left-right side, on one side is task-oriented, and on the other side is people-oriented. Correct. So again, none of these are value statements. None of these are good or bad. They're just different. So what is a task-oriented person? A task-oriented person is somebody that thinks about what needs to get done. Yes. They tend to think about the results or the process or the steps or the how-to. When you ask them about doing something, the first thing that comes to mind is, what do I do first? What do I do second? They start thinking through the process or the results of that process. What am I going to get? What comes out of it? On the other hand, people-oriented people, they tend to start thinking about things like, wait, who needs to be involved? How is it going to affect the people involved? Yes. Are people going to be treated fairly? Is it going to work out good for the people? And that may be internal, like your customers, your clients. It may be people that, themselves, but it's just the people piece of it that comes to mind first. And that's what they think about first. My joke is the task-oriented people go to bed at night and they think to themselves, today was a good day because I got that done, I got that done, I got that done. And, they're mentally checking off that list. Sometimes they're actually checking off the list too. Occasionally they wake up in the middle of the night and add things to the list. That's task-oriented people. People-oriented people, it's like, hey, today was a good day because I got to talk to this person. I got to talk to this person. I got to interact with that person. Yeah. This person told me about, it's all about the people. So if you think about that, some people are more task, some people are more people. So for you, were you task or people?
People.
People. Yeah. Okay. So your primary DISC then is going to be up here to the upper right. Correct. Where it's outgoing. It's the quadrant between outgoing and people. Correct. So let's start on the upper left, which is outgoing and task oriented, because that's where the D is, and DISC is DISC. So we're going to start with the D. By the way, for those of you paying attention, you'll get it in a minute. I'm going to tell you what I am. The reason I have to do this in order is tells you something about my wiring. So the D is the dominant personality. Yeah. It's about 10% of the population. These folks are very result-oriented people. These are lead, follow, get out of the way. They make decisions quickly. They don't need a lot of information. And by the way, if they make a decision and they don't like it, they'll just change it. It doesn't bother them. They just boom, 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 boom. Let's go, 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 go. They're D for dominant. Moving to the right, your quadrant, that's the I. I stands for inspirational. These people are wired by fun and energy, and they enjoy activity. They enjoy things to be. They're the folks that at the conference, somebody at the front of the stage says, we need a volunteer. And before they can even finish the word volunteer, the eyes at least have their hands up, and a couple of them are probably heading for the stage.
Yeah.
Okay. Occasionally I've seen one like jump on stage before the person finishes. They want to be involved. They want to be part of the center of attention. And not in a selfish way, by the way, because sometimes people hear that and think, oh, they're selfish. It's like, no. That's not what it means. That's just where they get energy. That to them is fun. That feeds their soul. So going down the S, this is going to be someone who's more reserved, but people oriented. This is my wife, by the way. S's are the nicest people on the planet. It stands for supporter. Yeah. This is also, by the way, the single most common group. So D's were 10%. I's are somewhere 20, 22, 25%, somewhere around that. S's are like 35 to 40% of the population. These folks tend to want they're supporters, and they tend to want the status quo.
Yes.
They tend to like things to be calm. They want everyone to be taken care of. They want things to be fair. They care about justice and rightness. And then the last group, the C's, that stands for cautious. So they're going to be task oriented and reserved. Right. These are the folks that care about getting it right.
Yes.
They want things to be done correctly. They care about the process and the steps. Yes. By the way, I have a high C component. That's one of the reasons that I want to do it DISC. Yeah. And that's, again, about 20 to 25% of the population, depending on the group.
Right.
And those C's, okay, are, again, they're the steps people. Yeah. They're the folks that, like, you need them to figure out a process. That's what they're good at.
Yes.
Now, here's the truth. Most of us are not actually one of those. We're usually at least two, sometimes even three, kind of blended together.
Correct.
So it's not necessarily, I just did them as if you're one. But the truth is, like for you, do you remember what your secondary characteristic was? Your tertiary?
Yeah, I think my secondary was a little bit of task oriented and goals oriented, actually.
Okay, so that'd be the D. Yeah. So you're probably what I would call an ID, which simply means your I and your D are kind of your two highest traits. And then your S and your C are a little lower. Yeah. Again, doesn't mean you can't work into S and C. It just means you have to be more deliberate about it.
Yes.
Because your natural language is going to be, you want to talk about getting it done, getting the results. Yeah. And having fun while you're doing it.
Correct.
It's like, how can we get this done, and how can we enjoy ourselves while we're doing it?
Exactly correct.
That's your language.
Yeah.
And somebody down here is like, I don't really care about having fun.
Yeah.
And I don't even care about getting it done unless it's done right.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to make sure everyone's taken care of and that we end up with good results, not just results. Yeah. And so if you don't put that in, they don't hear, they're kind of sitting there listening going, what's in it for me? Yeah. Why should I care? You're not feeding me. You're not taking care of myself. And so it's important as a leader to know just first yourself, because that's your own bias.
Correct.
It also tells you where your gaps are, because I've seen a lot of people that will hire people that are just like them because it's comfortable, right? It's like they walk in and you're like, hey, you're like me. This is fun. I enjoy you. I'm going to hire you. And then they end up with a whole team of people that are all wired the same.
Yeah.
And you're missing a whole set of people in the world, that need to be able to fed and heard and come. And so you're blind to things and you don't even realize you have a blind spot.
Yes.
Because everyone can be, this isn't, by the way, like only because I've heard people say things like, oh, I's make great salespeople. You know what? So do C's. They just sell in a different way.
Correct.
Okay. So it's not that one's better or worse. It's that they need a different process.
Correct.
So here's what happens. If you have a team that has a whole bunch of I's, that's your sales team, and then you hire a C, and all you ever do is talk about the I way of doing things, the C's not going to last very long.
Exactly.
And yet they could have been your best salesperson.
Correct.
Again, for some people. So it helps us see where's our gaps, where are our blind spots, where we can fit together. How can we communicate? How can we get people on board? And again, I like it because it's simple enough. I can hold this in my head, and just by talking to you for a few minutes, listening to the way you speak, listening to what you do, listening to how you use language, I can start getting an idea. Oh, this is probably how she's wired, or this is probably how he's wired. And then I can kind of probe and figure out if I'm okay, if I'm right. Well, okay, now I know how to communicate to you.
Correct.
And that's why I like it.
Yeah. And it's pretty sure that you're talking out of experience, Scott, because that's pretty evident based on the way you explained all of this. You brought up a very good point. And I feel like all the leaders, or even if you're not a leader, but you're involved in the hiring process, everyone needs to understand that you don't have to hire someone who looks like you or who is like you or who sounds like you. That was the biggest lesson that I learned when I initially joined this new company. And I was used to hiring people before, but they said, oh, we want to train you guys because ours is like a 100% remote company. So you're not always meeting the person, in person. You're just seeing them in for a small screen. So they said, okay, it's very common that you guys will be biased towards certain people. One, because you might have something in common with them. Some of the subjects might be very common that you've taken in college, or the area that you come from, or the culture or the background. Do not use that and keep it in your mind when you're interviewing the person, because you're looking for certain skills, both technical and soft skills, for this person to be successful in the job. And that to me was a big eye opener, because I never thought of it that way. I would get excited when I would interview women because I come from a tech background, and there's a big gap. That was
you run into very few.
Yeah, and that was what my first book was all about, like why we need more women in IT. And whenever I would see someone interviewing for a technical role, I would just get excited. And when I heard that training and that whole concept, I'm like, wow, I need to keep that aside. From then, I've been very conscious of the way I interview people. Now, in my mind, there is no bias at all. I treat everybody the same. Can you do the job? Yes or no? Would you be able to handle the pressure? Would you be able to meet the deadlines? And that's it. It doesn't matter to me where you come from, how you look, how you sound, what you do, what your culture, your background is, what your gender is. All I care about is, can you get the job done or not? And
there's some interesting studies out there where they've done blind interviews. I'll give you an example of one. So orchestras are actually another place where it tends to be certain instruments are male dominated or female dominated. And there's just kind of this history of that, right? And so they literally took some, I can't remember if this was the Philharmonic, one of the big, orchestras that everybody would know the name, kind of thing. And for the next tryouts, they had the people play, but behind a screen. So all they could do was hear them. They could not see them.
Right.
And then select the best players. And all of a sudden, a lot of the, men are better at this and women are better at that, completely went away.
Yeah.
And it was more, and because even unconsciously people were buying into that stereotype, didn't realize they were. Doesn't matter. It was still happening. Yeah. And you're right. It happens to us all the time, whether we want it to or not. And the first step is being conscious of it. Right. Because if you're unconscious of it, it's going to happen. Yeah. If you're conscious of it, now you've got some hope that you can kind of go, okay, wait a minute. I'm probably actually just liking them because they come from my hometown.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to ask some more questions or whatever.
Yeah. And you brought up a very good point also, Scott, when you were giving that example that if you are I person and you are talking or telling people to do things your way, you might miss out on this way of working, where the C's are incredible when it comes to processes and points and the way they do things. Our team is a mixture of all kinds of people. And I love that. I love that fact because one, it's challenging. Second, you can learn so much from these people. Like you said, it's not necessary that just because you fall into one quadrant doesn't mean you cannot learn the other ways of doing things. That's what I have learned. And I love it. There's this one person on our team who loves to wake up early and get things done way before anybody has even logged in. And when all of us are logged in and we are working, he is on top of everything. And recently we asked him to mentor another person on the team. And the first thing he did was he just handed over all his notes to this person and he said, here, this is going to be your Bible. And there was everything in it. Like each step was documented so well. And I'm like, wow, if I were doing it, I'm like a hands-on person. So I will go in, explain it to you. But documenting it, that much detail would not have been me. And that was so cool to see and to even learn. And I love that fact because that's something I wouldn't do, but that would be useful for someone who's joining in the future. So I asked this person to go ahead and upload that and make it a standard going forward so all of us can follow it, because all the time information is in our head when we're working on a certain application. So yeah, you brought up some amazing points.
Yeah, it's hilarious, but as a leader, especially if you know the strengths of your team and you know the areas where they shine, you can use that.
Yeah.
You know, so like we actually have, when I worked in the corporate world, we had a couple of people that anytime we were coming up with a new standard operating procedure or process, you know, we would get it drafted and we had a team of people that did that. And then literally we called them the breakers. We would give it to these people that were really high C's and be like, here, go break this and tell us where it's broken. Yeah. Just go play with it for a couple of days and come back and tell us everything we left out, you know, and they'd come back with like 4 pages of notes, you know, of here's where it went wrong here and here's what we had to do to fix it and blah, blah, blah. And okay, great. Now, and we'd rework the process and then, you know, go back. Okay, here you go again. It's the updated one. Try it again. Yeah. And what was hilarious, and they loved it. Yeah. You know, this was fun to them, you know. Now, if I had given that same task to somebody on my team who was my high I, they would have been like, why are you sending me to hell? You know, it's like, this is not fun for me and I'm not good at it and I don't enjoy it. It's not that they were bad workers. It's just that wasn't their skill set. That's not what came natural to them. And so, you know, you look for opportunities to use the people on your team in the strongest ways so that everyone succeeds. And they, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is different.
Correct.
People can actually get what they need to get done. And then you also have to look for ways as a leader to serve your team. Yeah. So as an example, I'm a high C, high D. Okay. That's my natural wiring. So I'm very task oriented. And so I come up and I realize that I've got people on my team that are high S's that need a lot of, you know, the high touch. Yeah. They need to know people care about them. That's what they want to hear. So I literally turned into a process visiting my S's. So on my calendar on a Wednesday, 3 names would pop up. And then the next week's 3 other names. And the next week. So I'd identified my S's. I put them on a rotating schedule. I would actually go to their cubicle with my notebook. They knew all of this, by the way. They knew it was a Wednesday event. Yeah. They knew what time it was. They knew when they came up in the rotation. Right. They were like excited for it. And I'd walk up and it'd be like, you know, how was your kid's baseball game last week? By the way, the reason I remember that there was a baseball game is because I wrote it down. You know, I'm reading out of a notebook. It didn't feel bad to people are like, well, doesn't that feel bad? It's like, no, because they're like, he cares enough to actually go through the effort of visiting with me, of knowing my kids' names, of, you know, and usually I begin to remember this stuff over time, but it didn't come naturally to me. Where for other people that are more wired that way, they remember all that stuff just naturally. Correct. I had to work at it, you know, but I went through the effort of working at it. They loved that. And by the way, you'll notice, I mentioned S's. I didn't say I went and visited the I's. And the reason I didn't is because they came to me. Correct. I didn't need to visit them. I taught them if my door is open, you're allowed to come in. Yeah. If my door is closed, unless somebody's, you know, burning or bleeding, you know, don't bother, you know, don't coming in because I'm working on something where I need some focused time. So if my door was open, the I's would just stop by. You know, they'd come by and chat for a few minutes and check in and tell me how, and off they'd go. And they were happy and I was fine. It didn't disrupt anything. That's why I kept the open and closed door rule. My D's didn't want me to come by. Yeah. They just needed to be told what to do and then leave them alone. You know, they're like, please don't come talk to me. I don't want to talk to you. And the C's the same way. So just by knowing those quadrants and knowing how people were wired, I was giving each of the groups more of what they need. Yep. The C's were the process people. I had to make sure that they had the process. It was well documented. You know, they had a system where if things went wrong, they could come for help. You know, all of those things. And the D's, it was really like, you know, here's the results. Here's what you need to get done. If you need help, come get me. Otherwise, adios. Correct. And, you know, and off they went. They were ready to go to the races.
Awesome. This is fun. This has been so much fun, Scott. I just want to know before we end the show, what is your top suggestion for people who feel burned out because of the fact that they're not able to manage their time well?
The most important word in the English language that those folks learn, it's a really hard word to say. It's got 2 letters. It starts with N and it ends with O. It's no. Because what happens is usually burnout comes from you're saying yes to one of 2 things, either too many things or the wrong things. Both of those will burn you out. So it is that stepping back and being intentional about saying, what is actually the things that I need to say yes to? And conversely, what are the things I need to say no to create more space in my life so that now I'm in alignment? I'm saying yes to the right stuff and no to the right stuff. And that's again where sometimes having accountability, having a mastermind or your spouse or somebody else who can help you.
Yeah.
Because again, learning to say no is actually a really hard skill to develop.
It is. And it will be one of the most important skill that anybody learns in their self-growth journey or self-improvement journey.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Scott. This has been amazing. Thank you for taking your time and thank you for being a guest on our show. Love it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I hope this has been useful for anybody who's been struggling with time management. Hope it was interesting to know what the DISC personality test stands for and what it means and how it translates. Make sure that you take it and learn how to improve your communication skills with your peers and your other coworkers. Don't forget to share with someone who you feel is going to benefit from this episode. Pay it forward. Thank you for tuning in for today's episode of Rise and Tell with Sheekha. My upcoming book, Unburnable Ambition, is all about how to chase your biggest goals without losing yourself to burnout. You can now sign up at sheekhaSingh.com/unburnableambition for early access and launch updates. Until next time, keep growing, keep glowing, and be yourself, and keep your ambition unburnable. Thank you.